First up is Representative Kraft on House File 3704. As you get settled, you can, when you get settled, you can introduce yourself for the record and proceed with telling us about your bill.
So, thank you, Madam Chair. I move that,
Yes, you do. Thank you. I'm sorry.
House File 3704 be laid over for possible inclusion.
Great. And with that, it looks like Representative Kraft, you have an A3 amendment?
I do. I would move the A3 amendment to put the bill in the form in which I would like it considered.
Great. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. With that, the amendment is adopted. We'll give that one a little pet tap too. And with that, would you like to tell us about your bill as amended?
I would. Thank you, Madam Chair. So grid enhancing technologies, or GETs, are about making better use of existing transmission infrastructure. So we've all heard that we need to build more transmission lines, but these projects cost tens or hundreds of millions of dollars and take years to build. GETs often cost hundreds of thousands of dollars with deployment times measured in months, but they can increase capacity by 10 to 40%. So MISO, the Mid-Continent Independent System Operator that operates the electric transmission system in a large part of Minnesota and in portions of 15 states in the Midwest, has the highest grid congestion costs of any electricity market in the country. In 2022, wholesale prices were $3.7 billion higher in MISO due to inadequate transmission capacity. So this impacts costs to Minnesota ratepayers. House File 3704 would require that utilities evaluate and create plans to implement these comparatively low-cost, fast-to-deploy grid-enhancing technologies, things such as dynamic line ratings, advanced power flow control, and topology optimization that can often pay for themselves within months. Many grid-enhancing technologies have been commercially available for years and are more widely used in other parts of the world, but utilities in the U.S. have been a bit slower to deploy these tools. While several utilities in Minnesota have been leaders in piloting dynamic line ratings in the U.S. and were very helpful as I was developing this bill, the bill is needed and can help Minnesota ratepayers start to see the benefits of more operational deployments of GETs needed to effectively mitigate grid congestion. So the vision for the bill is to shine a light on this really exciting area, incorporate GETs into the analysis of grid management and operations in Minnesota, so Minnesota ratepayers can see lower electricity costs, so that Minnesota renewable energy generation can see less curtailment, and so our grid can support more clean power to help hit our 2040 clean energy goal. So brief summary of what the bill does with the A3 amendment is that it requires utilities with significant amounts of transmission line miles in Minnesota to analyze whether the use of GETs would alleviate congestion points in their systems, and if so, how they could be implemented to do so, and provide that to the Public Utilities Commission. From there, it is up to the PUC and the management of the non-public utilities what happens next. The bill does not mandate that any projects happen. The first report would be due on July 1st, 2025, and then subsequent reports would be every 2 years based on a timeline to best fit in with other PUC filings transmission providers are already doing. With that, I would actually ask my testifier to come up.
Great. Welcome to committee. This is Madeline Smirlo with Regional Policy Manager, or as the Regional Policy Manager for Clean Grid Alliance. Welcome to committee. Please state your name for the record and provide your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Acom and members of the committee. My name is Madeline Smirillo. I'm a Regional Policy Manager at Clean Grid Alliance, which is a nonprofit organization based in St. Paul that does renewable energy advocacy in 9 states in the Midwest, including Minnesota, which is where I'm a resident, and manage our legislative and regulatory affairs for the organization. So I am grateful to be here on behalf of CGA, Clean Grid Alliance, where I work as regional policy manager and greatly appreciate the opportunity to testify in support of House File 3704, which would require the submission of plans to the Public Utilities Commission regarding the implementation of grid enhancing technologies, or as I will call them in this testimony, GETs. Minnesota has insufficient transmission capacity to support our changing electric needs, and this contributes to expensive congestion in grid operations and interconnection delays. Significant new interconnection and transmission infrastructure is essential to enable the thousands of new megawatts of wind, solar, and storage that will be needed to meet Minnesota's 2040 carbon-free energy requirements. But new high-voltage transmission lines average 7 to 10 years from MISO approval to operations. GETs offer a cost-effective short and medium-term solution to bridge the growing gap between transmission capacity and demand. The continued volume of congestion and wind curtailment happening in southwest Minnesota is unacceptable, depriving communities hosting wind farms and of the revenue that they should be receiving from existing projects. We must act to provide relief. GETs are the quickest and cheapest way to increase grid capacity and relieve congestion. As a state, House File 3704 sets us up to make a modest investment and see a significant impact. Additionally, as we transition to renewables, the need for a flexible and adaptable grid becomes essential. GETs facilitate the seamless integration of renewable energy by mitigating intermittency issues and optimizing power flow, thereby accelerating our transition to a sustainable energy future. By embracing grid-enhancing technologies, we can fortify our energy infrastructure against weather events and cyber threats. Grid reliability is our #1 priority, and these technologies enable rapid response mechanisms and adaptive measures, ensuring that our grid can withstand unforeseen challenges. GETs provide us an opportunity to optimize transfer capacity, minimize losses, and reduce operational costs, ultimately leading to savings for customers. Investing in grid-enhancing technologies not only modernizes our infrastructure, but also creates job opportunities in the burgeoning clean energy sector. By supporting House File 3704, we can stimulate economic growth, foster innovation, and continue to position Minnesota as a leader in the green technology revolution. In conclusion, though CGA re-emphasizes the continued need for substantial transmission build-out in the long term, passing House File 3704 on grid-enhancing technologies will initiate a near-term effort to secure a reliable, resilient, and efficient power grid to meet the needs of our communities today and prepare us for the challenges of tomorrow. By embracing innovation, investing in clean energy solutions, and prioritizing cost-effective strategies, we can pave the way toward a more affordable and sustainable future for all Minnesotans. Thank you, Chair Acom.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for Representative Kraft or our testifier before we go to public testimony? Seeing none, thank you. I'm sure you'll be here if questions come up afterwards. And we have one person signed up for public testimony at this point, Stacy Fuji with Great River Energy. Welcome to committee. Please introduce yourself and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. My name is Stacy Fuji, and I represent Great River Energy. So most of you in this room know Great River Energy is a generation and transmission cooperative, and we are owned by our 27 distribution cooperatives. So Great River Energy was formed so that for two purposes: to provide wholesale power and transmission services for reliability, affordability, and to the best interests of our members. To that end, as we discovered that congestion was increasing, we did something about it. We, in conjunction with Grid North Partners, which is a voluntary group of 10 utilities, completed a study in September of 2023 that showed 19 projects that could be done to facilitate congestion relief in Minnesota. At the end of 2023, several of those projects were put in service. The remainder of those projects will be finalized and put in service by the end of this year or next. Additionally, as Representative Kraft noted, Great River Energy is already utilizing GETs, or grid-enhancing technologies. We piloted a dynamic line ratings, say that 10 times fast, dynamic line ratings program that we are currently working with our members, with our vendor to expand further in our system. So we would say that we've done all these things without a mandate. But we understand, obviously, Representative Kraft and stakeholders' desire for more information and really to have a gut check on the utilities, right? So as Ms. Smirlo said, so as utilities, our priority, our job is to maintain a reliable and safe transmission system. So as we go along, you know, the grid is ever changing. The grid goes beyond the borders of the state of Minnesota. The grid encompasses transmission congestion or limitation points in Iowa and Illinois have an impact on Minnesota and vice versa. New generation resources are constantly coming onto the grid, and retirements are also taking resources off the grid. So we understand that people want assurances that as we move forward in an ever-changing system, that we are looking at all options, including grid-enhancing technologies. And so we get that. And so we want to thank Representative Kraft for really listening to those concerns and really taking them to heart. So the 8th Year Amendment that the committee just adopted moves us a long way. It substantially addresses the issues that we raised with Representative Kraft. But we would like to continue to work on this to do one small tweak and to be able to align and be consistent with what is in current existing law, and that is this. So the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission does not have jurisdiction to order Great River Energy to implement a project. They only are, we're our cooperative, so only our board can approve new projects. So consistent with, so in the amendment, the 8th Year Amendment in lines 2.9 to 210, you will see sort of that beginning distinction between investor-owned utilities and all other types of utilities. However, so we would like a little more an expansion and clarification of that language. So within the resource planning statute, it says that, you know, Great River Energy files a resource plan with the Public Utilities Commission. It undergoes the same scrutiny by the Commission, by the Department of Commerce, by stakeholders, as an investor-owned utilities resource plan goes to, with one exception. So under the law, it says that when we file a resource plan with the Commission, that resource plan is advisory only. And so we would like to include that type of language as not only a clarification, but comfort language for us to really align with all the laws that are currently in place. And like I said, we really want to thank Representative Kraft for taking the time to listen to us. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Any engineering questions, I'm going to punt to an engineer. But
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else wishing to testify on this bill from the audience today? Seeing none, let's see, we have, Representative Swedzinski, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just have a general question, if that's okay.
Sure.
You know, just in general, Representative Kraft, it sounds like you know, some of these utilities are already doing this. You know, why do you feel that you need to mandate it?
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Swedzinski. So Great River Energy certainly has talked about some of the specific things they're doing, but I would say relative to the potential for what can be done in Minnesota with this, we're early. Like there's a lot more that can be done.
Representative.
And that's borne out by my conversations with some national experts that have looked at this. If you want more detail on it, there's a great letter in there that comes from the Watt Coalition that goes into examples and more detail on the technology.
Follow-up,
Thank you.
Representative.
Thank you. I mean, thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Kraft, I still don't understand if they're already doing it, why you feel the necessary for the state to mandate it.
Representative Kraft.
Madam Chair, Representative Swedzinski, there's from my sense of this in digging into it and from others, experts in this, that there is a lot more benefit that can be done by an accelerated, shining a light on this area, a potential accelerated implementation of these in terms of opening up more of our grid for more renewable energy and saving ratepayers money. So I think we could do it faster, and that's borne out by others who've looked at it.
Follow-up, Representative.
All right, I have an amendment.
Pardon? You
I have an amendment if you get to it.
I think we're ready to take that up, so go ahead if you'd like to offer your amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate Representative Kraft's concern about cost and cost to ratepayers. And this amendment just ensures that we do keep costs as a major component of any of this moving forward. And the A2 amendment, which I'm moving forward before the committee, and I wish for you to consider, is it requires a filing to include identification of the source of the grid congestion. And on top of that, I really focus and compare the cost to remove the source of congestion compared to the implementing of the grid enhancing technology. And so if we're truly concerned about costs to, in agreement with your statement, Representative Kraft, the cost to ratepayers, that we would ultimately keep that first and foremost in mind to say, if the cause of the congestion is the problem, then that would go. Or if it's the cost of actually getting rid of the congestion is the first thing to go. So we just allow that to protect ratepayers ultimately so that they're not being penalized for things that are out of their control. And I'd ask for your support. Thank you.
Representative Kraft, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Would. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Swidzinski, for the amendment. I will point out that in the bill, there's quite a bit that talks about making sure that these are cost-effective investments that the PUC is supposed to evaluate. So that's in there to make sure it's cost-effective. I'm going to ask for a no vote on this. What you seem to be asking for is that the PUC would be looking at what is generating load and telling that to get off the grid, which doesn't, what if it's a school that's generating load or more EVs that have come online? So it doesn't appear that this is something we ever do, and so I just don't think it's a workable solution. We have plenty of focus in here on making sure these are cost effective.
Representative Swidzinski.
Madam Chair, and then, Representative Kraft, if that's what you're concerned about is limiting the load, I would be happy to orally amend the amendment to just say the production of. So the production of electricity, if we're concerned about that we have room to shove stuff into the line rather than take out, so it would be from a capacity of generation and not necessarily consumption, if that's the issue. I'd be open to an oral amendment if that would help to gain your support on the amendment.
Representative Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Swidzinski, I don't know that I follow you. I think you said that I was concerned about load. I'm concerned about this. I don't think this is something that we do. Putting this in just isn't workable and doesn't make sense. So I'm opposed to it on either side. I think when there's stuff in here to look at. Will the grid enhancing technologies improve the cost effectiveness and the amount of capacity that can be handled by the grid? I think it's sufficient as is.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
No.
The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. Any further discussion to the bill before Representative, yes, Representative Rarick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know it's hard for me too sometimes.
I almost, instead of saying Representative, I almost said Senator, so.
Oh, no, that's happened too, Madam Chair. Yes, in fact, we'll talk offline, but.
Okay.
So after you've amended this and it's 500 miles or more, who's left as the IOUs that this pertains to?
Representative Kraft.
Madam Chair, Representative Rarick, I don't have that on the top of my head. I know it exempts, winds up exempting some smaller ones that have less than 500, but I don't remember. I mean, it's obviously XL, GRE, Minnesota Power, but I don't remember all the ones that are in there or not. I can get that to you right afterwards.
Representative Rarick.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So, I'm sure that mandates will lower costs because that works all the time. That's awesome. So I'm just wondering, we didn't hear anything from any of the IOUs. I know you worked with GRE, but they're different because they work with co-ops and they have their own governance. But we didn't really hear anything from the IOUs that are directly regulated by the PUC in that kind of way. And what are they telling you about this, since they haven't come to speak at all? Or there's some of them are in the room. I don't know. What do they have to say about it?
And it seems, before giving it over to Representative, I believe there are some letters in the packet from some others, but Representative Kraft?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Representative Rarick, so this is, yes, it is requiring a study of a area that has been shown to have significant benefit. It doesn't require implementation. It requires analysis, and then that the PUC can determine if there is a cost, if this will benefit Minnesota ratepayers. So this will save Minnesotans money. Now, in terms of what the IOUs are saying, I don't want to speak for them. I've had great discussions with them, and I think they understand where this is trying to go. There's some interesting pilots going on, but this is saying, yeah, I want that we should, given the potential benefits from this, that we should look at it more.
Any follow-up, Representative
Yes,
Rarick? Sorry.
thank you, Madam Chair. So why do we need a mandate then to do this if they're already on board to do this? And I know Excel in particular is kind of at the tip of the spear for doing all kinds of things innovatively in the nation. So why do we need a mandate to have them investigate this and study it?
Representative Kraft.
Madam Chair, Representative Rarick, I think I already answered that. It's not happening fast enough. There's a lot of opportunity to do this. Talked with many outside experts on it and looked at it, and the potential reward for Minnesota ratepayers and for our renewable energy goals is significant, and I think it's worth having a study. You are welcome to disagree and vote against it, but that's why I brought the bill forth.
Thank you, Representative Kraft. Any further questions, Representative Rarick?
Just really quickly. Thank you, Madam Chair. So you understand MISO goes from here all the way to Texas and up into Canada. And you talked about, Minnesota's just a small part of MISO. And the congestion is not just Minnesota, but it literally is the entire system of MISO. So it's a little strange to me that we're doing this just in Minnesota when you're talking about a humongous system, and it's really more of on the federal level. So do you have any comments about trying to do something like this solely in Minnesota when we're part of a very, very large system? MISO is quite large.
Representative Kraft.
Madam Chair, Representative Rarick, so Jerry was just up here talking about a set of projects they did within Minnesota that improved the situation on transmission within Minnesota. There are certain lines that will benefit from it. Obviously, there's two ends of a line, and if the other end is somewhere else, that will have to be factored into the analysis. So it doesn't make sense to improve one half of a line if the other doesn't. So that would not be a recommended bit. But there's things that we can do here in Minnesota. And by the way, one of the things that one of the IOUs did say is they would actually like to open this up and maybe encourage more discussions with MISO. So maybe this will help and encourage those types of discussions.
Representative
Final
Rarick.
comment, thank you.
Yeah.
This sort of development takes years, if not a decade. The grid development is quite complex. And so it's just curious to me, it's just interesting to me, I guess, that we're having this discussion here. It's almost like it should be a much broader discussion within the whole MISO district or MISO regulation area. It seems a little bit odd that we're pushing a mandate down. We've already done the 2040 and other things, and it seems like an awful lot to ask of these big systems, whether it's Minnesota Power, or Excel, or Otter Tail Power. I know you want it to go as quickly as possible, but that also comes at a cost. So I conflate the two things of you saying, well, this is going to save money, but it's going to be a mandate which costs money more typically, and it's going to be faster which costs more money too. So I have a hard time believing that this is, maybe in 10 years from now it will save money, but those two kind of pressures cost more money. So when you're pushing faster and mandating it, those are two things that cost more money just in general. So I have a hard time understanding how this is going to save money and make things better.
Any closing comments, Representative Kraft?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the point of grid enhancing technologies is not to take 10 years to do things, that these things are less risky to do, cost less, and can be implemented in a short period of time to get benefits. These are being done extensively in other parts of the world, not as much here. We can benefit significantly from doing this, so I thank you for hearing the bill.
And with that, the bill is laid over.